Hello everyone, Eunice here. Today we are drawing a cute ghost girl, so without further ado, let's go and start doing that. We will start by preparing our canvas. Today we are using a standard square canvas from Procreate with pixel width and pixel height to 2048 pixels. DPI are 300, color profile set as sRGB with this low number. When it's done, hitting done over our top, and before starting to work onto our illustration, let's go under the description and we will download all the materials mentioned for this tutorial. When you did it, let's firstly go and select the brush that we are going to be starting with our illustration with. We will go to the brush library and we will select this brush that you downloaded with the title Dull Flat Pencil. Of course, if you want to use any other brush for your sketching part, you are welcome to select anything that you prefer. When you are done with selecting the brush, let's go to our layers. We will go to the background color and we will go to this color palette that you downloaded. On the bottom, we will go under palettes, and on the top, we will go under cards, and we will select the color with the title background. When we have the color selected, let's go to our actual color palette and we will select some color that will be seen onto our background. So let's go, for example, with this hair back color. When we are done with this preparational part, let's do one more thing. We will start by creating a bit of the scheme right here, and we will need to have the grid so we can create this scheme. So let's go to our range icon over the top left. We'll go under canvas and we will toggle drawing guide. Now we can barely see what's happening here, but we will go and change it by going to Edit Drawing Guide, and first we'll go under Grid Size and we will set it to 130 pixels. When we did it, we also will go to the slider on the top and we will select the color that will be seen onto our screen. So when you did it, let's hit down over the top and let's start working onto our scheme. So for the scheme, firstly, we will go with our brush onto the canvas and we will create the shape of the rectangle. So with one line, let's go and create the shape like that. In the end, we will hold our line and then we will go over the top to this popped up option. For me, it says polyline. For you, it might say something different. What we need to select right here will be rectangle. So if you have this option here, go and select it. If you don't have it, you might need to try it one more time. So what we need right now to create our future illustration, we will go and adjust our shapes. So we will go to this nodes that we have right here and we will be adjusting them in a way that we have 3 cells onto the left, onto the right, onto the bottom, and 2 cells on the top. So let's go and adjust the size of our little rectangle that we have right now onto the screen. So when you have the result like that, when you have 2 cells on the top and 3 on other sides, let's tap onto our screen to accept the changes. Now when we have this first frame, let's go and create a couple of more lines that will help us to build up our future illustration. So firstly, go into the middle and we will go from the top to the bottom and create a line going toward the bottom part. So when we have it, we will hold our Apple Pencil, we will hold one of our fingers on the screen to make the line straight, and when we have it, we'll go and create a couple of more vertical lines. So firstly, going 2 cells to the left from the central line and creating one more vertical line going the same way as our first one. So holding our Apple Pencil, holding one of our fingers, and when we have it, going to the opposite side and creating similar thing right here. So again, 2 cells onto the side. Again, holding our Apple Pencil, holding one of our fingers, and when we have the result like that, we are done with the vertical lines, but we will need to create a couple of lines that will be horizontal. So for the horizontal lines, firstly, let's go from the top and we will count to 4 cells. We will create the straight line going through the whole shape. Again, holding one of our fingers, holding our Apple Pencil, and straight away, to not be confused later on, let's go and name this line as eyes. So just writing down eyes right here onto the side. When we have it, we will go toward this area onto the bottom and we will create a couple of more lines here. So under the eyes, we will need to have the chin. So for the chin, we'll go from this line that we've created on the top, like the second line that we have for our eyes, and we will need to count to 6.5 cells. So we will go 4 cells, we already have 2 and 1/2 right here, and create one more line right here onto the side. So again, holding our Apple Pencil, when we are done, let's go and write down chin. Now, when we have the chin, we will need to have arms and legs. So probably it will be easier for us to go from the bottom and find where we are going to be creating the legs firstly. So let's go 1 cell from this line that we have on the bottom and create another line that we will name as our legs. So let's go write down legs right here onto the side. When we have it, we will go and create the line for our arms, and we will go from this little line that we've created right here onto the bottom, and we will go 1.5 cells up, and again we will create a line that will go through the whole shape. When we have it, holding it at the end, holding one of our fingers, if you see that it's not in the center, you can go to the option right here, editing mode onto the top, hold your Apple Pencil and move this line wherever it needs to be. So when we have it, let's tap onto the screen and let's write down arms. Now, when we are done with the basic lines right here, the very base, we will need to go and find out where we're going to be putting our facial features. So firstly, let's go toward these two cells that we have in the middle, the bigger ones, and we will need to go firstly with our vertical lines. What we need to achieve right here is 3 equal parts. So we will go to the left firstly, and we will count 1 cell and 1/3 of the cell, and we will go and create the line going in that way. So again, hold your line at the end, hold one of your fingers on this screen, and when you have it, let's go from the opposite side and do the same thing here. So again, 1 cell and 1/3 of the cell. So creating our line and creating something going in that way. When we have it, we will go toward the middle part and we will create one line that will be horizontal. So going straightly to the middle and creating our line going in that way. So again, hold your line at the end. If you see that it's not in the center, go toward this popped up option line on the top and adjust the placement of this element so you will have the equal parts right here on the top and on the bottom. Now, when we have it, let's tap on the screen and let's go over this line that we have for our eyes, and we'll create one more line that will be horizontal. So we will go like half cell up and we will create another straight line right here. When we have the monstrous scheme like that, we are done with our scheme, so we can move on to our sketching part. So for this sketching, firstly, let's go to our layers. We will go to this layer where we have this scheme. We will make it a little bit less visible. So we'll need to tap onto the N icon and we'll go to the opacity slider. Let's grab it and let's move it more toward the left. We still need to see what's happening onto this layer, but it doesn't need to be too disturbing. So find the level that works for you when you still see the lines. And when you are done, let's tap onto our layer and create one more layer on top by tapping on the plus icon. Now, when we have the result like that, we want to create the sketch and we want to create it on both sides at the same time. So we are quite lazy. What we need to do is to change our mode that we have right now onto our screen. So we want to use these cells. We will use another mode that is called symmetry. So onto this new layer, let's go again to our range icon over the top left. We will go to edit drawing guides, and here on the bottom we will go under symmetry. Now we lost our cells and we will go again to the slider on the top and we will find the color that is seen onto the screen. When you found it, let's tap onto our check mark on the top, and when we have everything set in that way, let's start working onto our sketch. So with the same brush, with the same color, or of course if you want to go and adjust it, go and adjust it. Let's go toward the chin area right here. We will go to one of the sides and we will start to create a chin right here. So going like that with very nicely looking lines going up and creating the line that will be quite nice. So when we have it right here on the bottom, let's go toward the sides and we will start to create the continuation of the shape. So we are going a little bit beyond the frames that we have right here and we are trying to connect everything nicely with the line that we've created on the bottom. So creating something going in that way doesn't need to be super perfect. We can adjust it later on. When we see that we need to go with the eraser or with something like that, let's firstly go and select our eraser. We will use the standard brush, anything. We will go toward these lines that we've created where we need to clean up our shapes, and we will go with our eraser and adjust the parts right here. So now take a look at the shape of the hat. If you want to adjust it slightly, go and adjust it. So for example, we can go to the sides right here, maybe soften it up. Again, if you need to go with your eraser and adjust something here, go and adjust it. When you like the shape, let's go and work onto some other elements. So go into our brush one more time and let's go toward this little line that we've created on the top. This line will be our bottom part of the fringe. So let's go and start to create it right here. So we will need to create it going in that way. We will go with slight curve right here. So we will emphasize on the shape of the hat. So we are not creating it in a straight way, but it's some kind of like going around the whole shape. So let's go like that and create something going in that way. So for now, we are not connecting everything in a nice way. We can keep everything open like that. And when we have it, let's go and work onto our facial features firstly. So we have these cells right here onto the sides. Let's go to one of them and let's let's create the shape for the eye. So we'll go to this rectangle right here, and we will start by creating a shape of the ellipse. So with one line, create the shape, hold it at the end, and let's go lift up what we are holding right now and go toward the editing tool over the top. So right here, let's go toward our nodes and we will go and adjust what we have right here. So let's go with the rounded shape, and with the shape that we are creating right now, we are not going to the lines, we are kind of touching them. So we will go and create something going in that way. You can go with a bigger shape, with a smaller shape, it's up to you. When you have the result like that, you can see we are not touching our shape right here onto the line, because here we will need to have one more shape and we will need some space right here. So when we have the shape that we like, let's tap on this screen. I'll probably go from the top and make it slightly smaller. Or of course, if you want, we can fix it later on. When we have the result like that, let's tap onto the screen and let's go over this line and we will start to create the eyelashes right here. So for the eyelashes, we will go around the shape and we will firstly start to recreate what we have for the top part of our eye. So we are trying to create a similar curve right here, going along the whole shape and starting to go outside. And again, we are continuing to create this line. Firstly, we will need to create the actual shape right here that will go some kind of hugging the whole shape of the eye. So going like that. If we need to create a couple of lines, going and creating as many lines as we need. We're not going toward the bottom right here. We have a bit of space. And now when we have the overall shape, we will need to go and create some kind of the thickness right here. And we will create it in a peculiar way. So we will go from the bottom right here and we will start by creating a line going up in that way. So we are starting from the bottom. We are creating this very nicely looking tip of our little eyelashes right here. And then when we have this tip, we will need to go up and we will need to connect it with the actual shape that we have onto the top. And again, we can go and thicken it up or make it thin. It's up to you. If you want to create the different elements right here, for example, the actual eyelashes in the shape of the something like that, you are welcome to go and do that. If you don't want to do that, keep everything as it is right now. Just go along this whole shape and create it in a nice and smooth way. Take a look at everything from the distance, decide whether you maybe want to go and elongate this thing or work onto the overall shape. Go and do what you need to do. When we have the result that we quite like, let's go toward the middle part of our eyes and let's create a couple of details right here. So later on, we will not forget to create that. So let's go like that and create the shape of the ellipse at the bottom. You can go and hold it. You can go and adjust it by going to the editing tool or just map out what you want to create. So when we have it, we also will go more toward the bottom and create one more little shape right here. If you want, you can shade it, so we will have the result going in that way. When we have the result like that, let's continue by going toward the middle and we will create the spooky little mouth right here. So for the mouth, we will go toward this little line that we have in the center and we will start by creating a line going in that way. Now, when we have this line, we will need to go toward the bottom part and we will go and find some kind of the center of this line, or we will go a little bit lower than the center and create it in that way. So firstly, mark down where you want to finish up creating your mouth. And when you have this line, we will go and start to connect it with the thing that we have on the top. So we will need to create a very open mouth like that. You can go with a different shape, of course, if you want to. Try to add the volume right here onto the bottom, so we will have a nice looking shape. And when we have it, let's go and work a little bit onto the top. So we don't want to create the very silly mouth like that. We can go toward the top and create some kind of the fangs right here. So let's go from the middle part or from the corner if you prefer. We will go and create the shape going in that way. Let's go with the very softly looking fangs, and when we have the result like that, let's grab our eraser and we will erase this top part because we don't need that. If you want to work more onto the shapes, you are welcome to go and do that. You can go and soften up the corners or some other elements. If you see that maybe the mouth is a little bit too big, you are welcome to go and make it smaller if you want to. Work with your brush, work with your eraser and create the shape that you would like. So maybe we can work onto our little things right here and make them a little bit less protruding if you prefer. So when we have it, we also can go toward the middle part and we can map out where we are going to be creating the mouth elements right here, some kind of tongue right here. So let's go toward the bottom part and create the shape going in that way. And again, if you want, you can go toward this area and shade it so you will see what you are creating in a clean way. So when we have the result like that, we are done with the face. So let's go and work a little bit onto the hair. So for the hair, firstly, we'll go toward the very top, and we will start by creating a rounded shape like that. Going like that, again, creating a very rounded element. When we have it, we will go from this element and we will start to create the outside parts of our shapes. So we'll go toward the chin line right here. You can make a little mark down like that, and for this chin area, we will need to go toward the top, and we will need to connect it with the shape that we have onto the top. So we will start by going toward this element, and we will start to create a curve going in that way. So we will need to achieve a very soft look. So going like that, starting to create the element going like that with a very wavy shape like that. And when we have it, again, we will create a couple of lines right here to see whether we are doing everything in the right way, whether it looks good. You can work with your brush, work with your eraser, and clean up the shape to see clearly what you are doing. So let's go and clean it up and see whether we like the overall shape. If we don't like it, we can go and adjust it. So for example, we can go from here and maybe create a bigger dip right here. So going like that, and again creating the lines that we will like right here. Again, we can go over the top and maybe work a little bit onto the overall shape, so we can make it a little bit more like a dome shape. And when we have it, again, working with our brush, working with our eraser, and adjusting the shape until we like how it looks. So now when we have the result like that, let's continue by going toward these parts near our face, and we will create the hanging pieces right here. So some kinds of the long fringe right here. So let's go from the top. We will start by going toward this area, and we will go toward the middle part, and we will start to create the hanging piece like that. So going like that, creating it, going toward the outside part and starting to create the thickness right here. So trying to repeat the similar shape to what we already created, and going down and creating the shape going like that. Trying to create a rounded shape on the bottom, and then we will need to create the nicely looking elements right here onto the bottom by creating some kind of the lines like that. So very triangular looking, going like that, creating that little gap between these parts and creating the line going in that way. Again, you can go along the whole shape right here, adjust the overall shape, work with your brush, work with your eraser, pay attention toward these parts that you are creating right here. They doesn't need to look like that. They should go with the flow of the hair and create some kind of the like gravity right here onto this part. And again, if you want to go and adjust something, go along these lines and create something that you would like to see right here. So for example, we can go toward these parts, and on the top we can make them a little bit flatter. So going like that and creating something going in that way. And again, we are working with our brush, with our eraser, with the smaller size of the eraser, and creating something that will look nice. So let's go like that, create this element, and then we can go and work a little bit more onto this fringe that we have in the middle. So for example, let's go from this corner, and we will start to create a couple of flowy lines like that. So not a very straight line as we had before, going with our brush and with our eraser to maybe erase some parts and see clearly what we are doing. If you need to fix something with the brush, go with your brush, create it in a way that you like. All that we need to do right here is to create some kind of the fringy shape. So when we have the result like that, let's continue by going toward the lines that we have right here and the outside lines, and we will start to create them in a nicer way if we see that we can do that, or clean them up, or adjust the shape overall. When we have it, we will go toward the bottom part, and we will again work on the overall shape that we have right here. So let's go toward the sides right here, and we will start to create the line going down in that way. We will go and try to connect it nicely with the shape that we have onto the top. So if we need to create something going in that way, we will go and do that. Overall, we are creating some kind of the pear shape. So going like that and erasing the parts that we don't need. Let's add a bit of volume right here onto the bottom, and that means that we will create a bit of the rounder shape right here. So again, if we need to go with our eraser to clean up the shape, we will go and do that. And when we have the result like that, we will go and continue creating the shape on the bottom, and we will need to do it in that way. So we are some kind of creating the continuation of the shape that will go toward the inside part, and we will have some kind of the shape like that. So let's go and work a little bit more onto the shape, and we will create the shape going in that way. We are trying not to go too far beyond the frames that we've created. So if you see that you already did it a little bit, go with your brush, go with your eraser, and try to stay inside the frames that we've created for our like sketching part, the skin part right here. So for example, let's go toward these outside parts that we have above the chin line, and we will try to make everything in a more rounded way. And when we have the overall shape like that, let's continue by going toward the inside parts that we have, and we will create some kind of the t-shirt right here. So for the t-shirt, firstly, let's go toward the middle part, and we will create a bit of the neck right here, so go in with a very small shape like that. And when we have it, we will go toward the outside parts, and we will start by going toward these arms lines firstly, and we will start to create the shape of the t-shirt. So we will need to have a bit of the shoulders right here, so going with a slightly rounder shape right here, and going toward this part and creating the line going in that way. Of course, if you want to create a different shape right here, you are welcome to go and do that. If you need to go with a couple of lines to create a nicer shape with your eraser and with your brush, go and do what you need to do to create a nicely looking element. And then let's go toward the outside parts right here and create the bottom part of our t-shirt. So you can go and create the shape going in that way, for example, or create a different shape for the t-shirt. Work again with your brush and with your eraser to create a nice shape. Now, when we have it, let's go from these little armpits elements, and we will go towards the line that we have for our legs, and we will start to create the shape going in that way. So going like that, and when we have it, going toward this line that we have for our legs, and we will start by creating a little shape like that. So creating a spooky looking dress, going toward the outside parts if you want to soften it up, for example. When we have the result like that, let's go toward this little part and let's create the legs. So going from the middle and starting with a very simple shapes of the legs like that. So going like that and creating a very rounded triangular shape. Go with a bigger shape, with a smaller shape. Take a look at everything from the distance to decide whether you like it or not, whether you want to work on the shape. For example, we can go maybe with a bit of the rounder shape right here if you want to. Or if you want, you can go toward this line that we have for our legs. So where we have the very bottom part. Work onto these legs a little bit more and maybe move the bottom part of the dress a little bit lower. So we can go with our eraser and create like a bit of the different shape for our dress. So creating something like that, we can work with our eraser, erase the parts that we don't need. So you can create different things right here. And then again, create the legs that will look nice right here onto the bottom. Now let's take a look at everything, decide whether we like how everything looks or whether we want to go to some areas and maybe adjust them. We can work a little bit more onto the dress, maybe more onto these shoulders right here so they look not that weird. So spend some time here, adjust the things that you want to adjust, and when we have the result that we like, let's go and work more onto the hair. So firstly, for the hair, let's go and start working onto the bottom part. We will do the similar things to what we have right here onto the bottom part of our fringe, the long part of the fringe. So going toward the sides and starting to create the cuts right here. It's probably will be easier by going toward our eraser, and we can go toward these parts and make the actual cuts right here. And then when we have these cuts, we can go and start to connect them nicely with our shapes going in that way. So let's go like that and create a couple of elements going in that way. And when we have it, let's take a look at everything that we've created. So for example, let's adjust it slightly. For example, going with our eraser and adjusting the parts right here onto the bottom. And to make the things a little bit more interesting, we can go and turn off our assisted drawing and work a little bit more onto our sides to create some difference inside the hair. So let's go to our layers. We will go to this layer where we have our sketch. We will tap on it and we will use the option Drawing Assist from the list to turn it off. When we did it, let's get back to our brush and let's first go toward this middle bottom part, and we will create a peculiar looking detail, and it will again emphasize onto the overall shape that we are creating for our girl. So we will create some kind of the shape going in that way. Let's connect it nicely with the shape that we have onto the top. We will grab our eraser and erase the parts that we don't need, so creating some kind of the ghostly little tail like that. Again, work with your brush, work with your eraser, create the nicely looking shape. We can also go toward these parts and create more cuts, for example, or create different cuts right here onto this side. So spend some time here and adjust the parts to your liking. So for example, we can go and maybe create a bigger cut right here, going like that, creating like the shape going in that way. All that we need to remember that these cuts don't need to be too flat and too straightly looking. So we will need to follow the direction that we have for our actual hair. When we have it, we also can go toward the sides and we can create some kinds of the flowy little shapes right here. For example, let's go toward the left firstly, and we will create some strands of hair. So going like that, going toward the shape that we have for our hair, trying to connect it nicely with the main shape. So we are not going in a shape like that, for example. We are going in accordance with the overall shape and we are adding the details right here. So when we have it, we can go, for example, to the bottom too and create another little strand of hair that will be some kind of flowing. Going toward this part, and we can create some kind of the element that will look something similar to what we have right here. So we will have a nicely looking ghostly effect again right here onto this side. When we have it on one side, let's go to the opposite side and create something similar here too. So we can go a little bit lower, a little bit higher with the shape and create a couple of free strands right here too. So let's go like that, create a couple of details, again, trying to create them in a nice way, in a believable way. When we have that into our illustration, let's take a look at everything and decide whether we maybe want to adjust some parts. So for example, if you want to, firstly, let's go and take a look at everything without our lines of the scheme. We will go to our layers and go to the layer where we have our layer with the scheme. Tap onto the check mark and see what we have created. So we can take a look at everything, and if you want to adjust some parts, we can do it very easily. So firstly, let's go again to our layers and to make the changes on both sides the same way as we have created them. Let's tap onto this layer and use the option Draw and Assist, so we'll be able to use our Symmetry Tool. And then we will go to the Magic Wand tool over the top left and we will use the option Liquify. Here on the bottom, we will use the option Push and we will go to the size slider. So you can go and adjust the size, and we can go to some of the areas and very easily go and adjust some parts. So you can sculpt it a little bit to achieve the look that you prefer. So for example, let's spend some time here and adjust our shape slightly, and we will go and use this Liquify tool. So with this tool, I decided to move the eyes a little bit down and make them slightly bigger, so everything will be even cuter. And also adjust the shape of the hair from the bottom, so we are lifting it a little bit up. If you are satisfied with everything here and if you don't want to change anything else, let's tap onto our Magic Wand tool twice to get away from this mode. Let's take a look at everything from the distance. If you maybe want to go manually and adjust some parts with your brush, with your eraser, with anything else, go and do that. But if you're satisfied with everything here, we can move on to the next part where we'll start to add the colors. So for the colors, firstly, let's go to our layers. We will go to our layer where we have the sketch. We'll tap onto the N icon, and again, we will adjust the opacity of everything that we have right here. When we did it, let's tap onto our layer to close this window, and then we will create one more layer on top. To see clearly what we are doing, let's grab this layer and we will hold it and we will drag it underneath our layer with the sketch, so we'll be able to recreate the details right here. When we did it, let's one more time tap onto this layer and we will use the option Draw and Assist. So again, we will be creating the details on both sides at the same time, and then we will get back to our color palettes and we will select the color with the title scheme. So when we did it, we also will need to go to our brush library and we will need to pick another brush that will be quite smooth. So for example, we can go to the calligraphy folder, we can select monoline brush, and as we want all of our lines to be pretty smooth, let's tap onto our monoline brush and go inside the brush studio. On the left, we will go under stabilization and we will be playing with amount of streamline and amount of stabilization. So you can play around with it. You can go to the drawn path, try it out right here, whether it feels good to you. If you want, you can set the settings the same way as you see them right now onto your screen, or you can go and adjust it to your liking. Just try it onto your drawn path, and remember that you can always get back to this option if you need to adjust something else. So when we are done adjusting our brush, let's tap down over the top, and we will start by going to our size size slider and we will set it to something pretty small. So for example, maybe 9% or so. And we will start by recreating the overall shape that we have for our head. So again, let's go and start to recreate it. If you feel that this size is a little bit too big, go with a smaller one and create the details going in that way. So you can repeat everything the same way as you see it onto your sketch, or you can go and adjust it again if you want to. So go and create a nicely looking element, and let's go over the top, and we will need to go around the shape. We don't need to be very neat right here. We will go and close the shape. That's our main goal right here, and we will drag and drop the color inside this part. If you don't see what you have onto your sketch, you can go and change the color, for example. So we can go back to our layers, go to the layer where we have our lines or some kind of the sketch lines. We will go to the magic wand tool one more time, and we will go under hue, saturation, and brightness. So here you can go to the saturation slider, to the hue slider, see what you have right here, to see what you have right here. So when you are done with adjusting these little sliders on the bottom, when you see what you have onto your sketch and onto this new color, tap onto the magic wand tool and continue by going and recreating other details. So as we are working with our face, firstly, let's go and recreate the facial features here too. So we will go to our layers, and we will go to the layer where we have our face. We will create one more layer here, and we will create the facial features. But before doing that, we can finish up with the whole face by going back to our layer with the face, and we can recreate this little detail that we have right here onto the bottom by creating the shape of the neck. So let's go like that and create the detail going in that way. Also pay attention to the connections that you are creating with your lines. So if you see that maybe you can go with your eraser and adjust the parts to see them the same way as you have created them onto your sketch, go and do that. So grab your eraser and adjust the parts that you need. So for example, we can go a little bit over the bottom part and create the shape in a cleaner way. And with the eraser, you can use all the options that you are using with your brush. So you can hold your line at the end, so you can go to the editing tool over the top, adjust it from here if you need to. Create nicely looking connections right here, and when you have the result that you like, let's go again to our layers, and we will go to this new layer that we've created. Onto this layer, we will again turn on our assisted drawing, so tapping on the layer using the option Drawing Assist, go into our color palettes, and let's firstly start by creating this irises part. So we'll go toward the lashes and eyes color, and we will go and recreate these inside parts firstly. So repeating what we have onto our sketch, going like that with one line, hold your line at the end, and if you need to adjust it, rotate it firstly, go toward the editing tool over the top, and if you need to work from here, go and adjust the shape to your liking. Again, you don't need to repeat everything similar to what you have onto your sketch. If you see that maybe you can create something better, you are welcome to go and try it out right here. You always can take a look at your illustration or something that you are creating right now from the distance to see whether you are doing everything right. So for example, now it looks fine. We can tap onto the screen to accept it, and straight away let's go and drag and drop the color inside. So when we did it, let's go and recreate this little part that we have on the top. You can go with either smaller size of the brush or the same size of the brush. You don't need to go with a full line right here. You can go partially and create nice connections between the parts that you are creating. As for this line that we are creating right now, we will need to create it in a pretty rounded way, and we will need to pay attention toward the elements that we have right here. So we will go a little bit lower with our shape right here, and we will create a nice looking tip. So we are some kind of hugging our shape of the iris right here. If we need to go a little bit lower with our shape, we will go and do that. So pay attention toward the thickness right here. When you have the right thickness, going over the top and creating this very nicely looking tip right here. So again, if we need to go with our eraser to adjust it, we will go and do that. We will need to have like a very nicely looking tip. So going with our eraser if we need to adjust it and creating the shape that we like. Again, working partially onto this line. Of course, if you want to try out to create it with one line, you are welcome to go and do that. When we have it, let's go and recreate the bottom part. So I will try to do it with one line. I'm not going to create it in a perfect way again. So going like that, if we need to create something through our editing mode to adjust it, for example, we'll go and do that. Pay attention toward the roundness of this element and smoothness of this element. So if you see that it's not looking too good, you are welcome to grab your brush, grab your eraser, and adjust the parts manually. So when we close the shape, let's try to drag and drop the color inside. If you zoom in and you see that you have some gaps or something that is not colored, some parts, you're welcome to go manually and add the colors toward these elements. Now let's take a look at everything and decide whether we maybe want to soften something up or on the contrary create the tips that will look a little bit tippier. We will go with our eraser and with our brush and we will adjust these parts to our liking. For example, onto this side, let's go with slightly rounder shape on the top and a bit of the tip right here onto the bottom. And again, we will work a little bit onto this tip that we have onto the other parts. So for example, let's go with something going in that way, and when we have the result like that, let's go toward the mouth and we will recreate it here too. So go into our color palette and we will go and select the color with the title Eye Gradient and Mouth, and we will go toward this mouth elements and we will recreate it. So let's start from this little part that we have in the middle. We will start to recreate the details. So going along this line that we've created onto our sketch, trying to create very rounded looking shapes for our fangs right here, and going down and recreating the overall shape that we have for the mouth. Again, you can hold your light at the end, go to the editing tool, adjust it right here, try to create a nice connection right here onto the bottom. Maybe work a little bit onto this curvature of these lines that we are creating right here. Take a look at it from the distance to decide whether you like the roundness and the overall shape. If you like it, tap on the screen and drag and drop the color inside this part. If you want to adjust some parts, you are welcome to go over some of the elements. For example, maybe we want to go and make the fangs a little bit smaller or a little bit rounder. It's up to you. You are welcome to go and adjust them to your liking. Take a look at everything from the distance. When you are satisfied, you are satisfied. When we are done with it, let's continue by going towards the layers and we will create one more layer on top. Now onto this layer, let's tap on it and use the option clipping mask. And also we'll tap on the layer and use the option drone assist. So onto this layer, we are going to be creating some kind of the gradient right here onto the eye area. And to see it clearly, we can go to our layer where we have our sketchy lines and we can tap onto the check mark and we can hide it. Now, when we did it, we will go to this layer with the same color that we have right now. So it is our color with eye gradient and mouth. And we will go and change the brush. So go into our brush library, go into the airbrushing folder, and we will select soft blend brush. Let's set the opacity of this brush to something around 35%. We will go with the big size of the brush, and we will go from the bottom part and we will start to add some kind of the gradient right here. So we will need to have a bit of the darkish color right here onto the top, but we will go with slightly different color right here onto the bottom, and we are trying to put this color onto the bottom part and we are trying not to go inside the shape that we have for our mouth. It's the same color, but it won't be that nice if we have this like different color right here onto this element. Trying also not to go toward the shape that we have for our eyelashes. If you did, go grab your eraser and adjust the parts that you don't need. So go over the elements that you recolored and recolor them back. So when you have the nicely looking gradient like that, let's get back to our brush library. We will go again to the calligraphy folder, select our monoline brush, and then we will go toward our layers. We will unhide our layer with the sketchy lines, and we will go and create one more layer on top. Tapping on this new layer, selecting again clipping mask firstly, tapping on the layer, selecting drone assist secondly, go into our color palette and selecting the color with the title bottom eyes and tongue. With this color, we will go toward this second circular shape that we have right here, and we will go and recreate it here. So again, with one line, creating the shape like that, holding it at the ends, rotating it so it looks horizontally. If you need to adjust the size or placement or anything, going toward our editing tool and adjusting it from here. So let's position it in that way. So going in that way, trying to create the horizontally looking shape. Take a look at it from the distance if you need to. Take a look at the opposite side so you don't have this little note right here, and it will be easier for you to see whether you need to adjust something or not. When we have everything in a nice way, tap on the screen and straight away let's go and drag and drop the color inside. By using the same color, let's go towards this area where we have the tongue and let's recreate it here too. So let's go from the bottom and let's recreate the shape. So create something rounded like that. Go toward the bottom, close the shape like that, drag and drop the color inside. Take a look at it from the distance. Decide whether you maybe want to grab your eraser and adjust the shape slightly by going, for example, from the bottom. And we can create some kind of the shape going in that way. So the shape is some kind of receding toward the inside of the mouth. When we have it, we also can go over the top and maybe make it slightly rounder right here onto the sides. Again, if you want to see clearly what you did, we can go back to our layers, hide our layer with the sketchy lines and see whether we like the result or not. If you want to go right now without the lines of the sketch and adjust something here, go and do what you need to do. When you're satisfied with everything, let's get back our sketchy lines and we'll go and create one more layer on top. Tapping on the layer, clipping mask, tapping on the layer, drawing assist. Onto this layer, we are changing the color to light orange and we are going toward this second little shape right here inside this first shape, and we will create the similar element right here to what we have onto the top. Let's go and create another ellipse. So again, trying to position it horizontally, go into our editing tool if we need to adjust it, taking a look at it from the distance to see clearly what we are doing, taking a look at this element right here so it's nicely looking for us. When we have it, tap it on the screen and dragging and dropping the color inside the shape. If you want to adjust it, so for example, make it smaller or differently shaped, firstly, let's go back to our list and hide our layer with the sketchy lines. And one more time, let's take a look at everything. If we want to change it, let's go to our adjustments, Liquify Tool, push option, and we will go and maybe make this thing slightly smaller by going from the sides and making it a little bit smaller. So if you want to do it with your Liquify tool. Find the shape that works for you. Again, take a look at it from the distance. If you like it, you like it. Let's tap onto our Magic Wand tool twice to get away from this mode. And now when we have the result like that, let's finish up with our face by adding little cheeks right here. So for the cheeks, firstly, let's go and find our main shape of the head right here. Let's create one more layer right here. Let's tap onto this layer and use the option clipping mask firstly, and then we will again tap on the layer and use the option drawing assist. Now going back to our color palette, and we will select the blush color, and we also will go to our brush library, airbrush and folder, soft blend brush, same settings right here, 35% of opacity. Going toward the bottom part of our eyes, so underneath them, and we will go with slightly bigger size of the brush probably to make it a little bit softer. Going right here and starting to add the cheeks. So you can again go with a different size, you can go with smaller element right here, for example, only under the eyes. Add more color right here, position it differently if you prefer. When you have it, let's also go toward the inside parts and let's add a bit of the blushing right here. Firstly, we will go toward our brush library, again going back to our calligraphy folder and selecting our monoline brush, changing the color to blush lines, and then going to our layers to turn off assisted drawing onto this layer. Let's tap on it, let's use the option drawing assist, and with the smaller size of the brush of, for example, 2% or so, we'll go inside the cheeks area right here, and we will go and create a couple of lines like that. We're not using the assisted drawing right here because we want the lines to look at one side and not like looking like that. So we are going manually and we are creating the lines on the opposite side the same way as we have created them onto the opposite side. So creating it in that way, trying to position the lines similarly. So try to position the shapes the similar way that you have it onto the opposite side. When we have the result like that, when we are done with our face, let's get back to our layers and unhide our layer with our lines. So when we have it, when the face is done, let's move on to the hair. So for the hair, firstly, we will need to go above all these colored layers that we've created and create one more layer right here. So tapping on the layer and creating our drawing assist firstly. And when we have it, we will go and create the front part of our hair firstly. So go into our color palettes and we will select the color with the title white. So with the white color and with the same brush that we are using, monoline brush, we will go and firstly work onto this top part of our hair. So let's go to these fringe elements and let's go and recreate them. So again, going with our brush, creating the elements, you can hold the line and the end, going toward the bottom part, creating these little elements right here. Again, trying to create a curvy little shape, going along this whole thing and creating the cuts that will look nice. Again, you can hold your line and the ends and create it in that way. And then when you have this hanging part, let's go toward the inside part and let's recreate it too. It should be quite parallel to what we have onto the outside part. So hold your line and the ends, go to the editing tool to adjust it if you need to. You can cover the part of the face with these elements. Take a look at everything from the distance, decide whether you like the placement, the rotation, the curvature of this element or not, whether you want to go and adjust some parts, for example. When you are satisfied, tap on the screen and let's go and recreate the shape that we have for our fringe right here. So let's go toward the bottom and let's try to connect it nicely with the shapes that we have outside. So going like that and starting to create these little details right here. Try to create some cuts right here that will look nice. You can go with some kind of wavy line right now and then maybe later on adjust it slightly if you want to. Work with your brush, work with your eraser, create the shape that will look nice. And when we have it, we also will need to go toward the top and we will need to finish up creating the closed shape right here. So let's connect the thing right here that we have created onto the sides with another curve on the top. When we have the result like that, let's drag and drop the color inside the shape and see what we have created. So if you need to go outside, pay attention to the outside parts right here. If you need to go to some areas and adjust it, go and adjust it. So for example, you can go and work a little bit more onto these elements that we have right here, the tips of our hanging parts. So work with your brush, work with your eraser and adjust the parts so they look nice right here. If you notice that you have some miscolored places right here when you were dragging and dropping the color, go manually and add the color toward these areas with your brush. So for now, let's go over some of the elements and maybe work onto the tips, work onto some other parts if you prefer. When we have the result like that, we are done with the front part of our hair for now. So let's go and add the back part of our hair. So for the back parts, we will firstly need to go to our layers and create one more layer, but this layer should be behind the face and everything. So let's grab it, let's drag it underneath our face, and again we will tap on the layer and use the option Drawing Assist right here. And we will go and recreate the overall shape that we have right here. So let's start from the top, again working with our brush, creating our shapes. You can go and work with the smaller size of the brush or bigger size of the brush. Pay attention toward the connection right here. Go towards the outside parts and start to recreate them too. I'll probably make the size of the brush a little bit bigger and work onto these elements right here. Again, we will need to pay attention to the roundness of the shape and seamlessness of the whole shape, so it should look pretty seamless. We will go toward the bottom part too and we will recreate this element here too. So if you need to have a couple of attempts right here, go and have as many attempts as you need. Again, pay attention to the connections, work with your brush, work with your eraser, try to create the seamlessly looking line right here. When we have the shape here, let's go toward the bottom and again let's work with our little cuts right here. So going like that and straight away you can go and work with your brush and with your eraser to make these cuts in a nice way. So we will have something similar to what we have onto our sketch. Going like that, starting to recreate the details, so connecting everything. Our main goal right now is to create the closed shape so we'll be able to drag and drop the color inside later on. So let's again continue working with our brush and with our eraser, creating the closed shapes. And as for this middle part, let's go like that and close the shape in that way firstly. So when we have it, when the shape is closed, when we don't have any gaps into our line, let's drag and drop the color inside. And when we have the color, let's go and see whether we need to go and adjust some parts. If you want, you can again go to your layers and hide your layer with the lines to see clearly the outlines that you've created right now. You can go along the lines with your brush and with your eraser to create the nicely looking elements right here. Again, trying to create everything in a very, very smooth way. So let's go and adjust it if we need to adjust it. Now, when we have it, let's get back to our layers. We will go and unhide our layer with the hair. And we will go and start to recreate these additional details that we've created onto our sketch. So to do that, we will need to go to our layer with this shape that we've created for the back part of the hair. We will tap on it and we will turn off our drawing assist. When we did it, we will go and start to recreate these additional little details and add the difference toward our hair. So let's go right here, start to create the cut that will look peculiar. So going in that way, starting to connect everything with our eraser. Working with our eraser and our brush to create a smoothly looking shape. So going in that way, if we see that we overdid it a little bit, working with our brush and continuing to create the shape right here onto the bottom. Let's go with a very nicely looking shape like that. If we see that we overdid it, we will go and add the color, or we will try to recreate it in a different way. Let's go with our eraser and erase this part. Let's work onto this tip right here. We'll try to make it very, very like peaky. When we have it, going toward other elements right here and starting to recreate them the same way as we have them onto our sketch. Again, working with our brush, working with our eraser, erasing the parts that we don't need. Now, when we have the overall shape, let's go outside and let's create these additional looking details. So going toward the parts that we've mapped out onto our sketch and starting to recreate them. So we will be creating some kind of this shape, for example, adding a bit of thickness to it right here and creating some kind of the cuts inside the overall shape. So going in that way, when we have it, we can go towards the bottom too and create another little shape right here. So for example, going in that way, adding some thickness right here. Take a look at it from the distance to see whether you want to adjust some parts or maybe create them in a different way. When you have it, let's go toward this little part and let's recreate it too. So we will go and create it like that. For example, we will create some kind of the flamey shape. So going with a bit of a thicker shape onto the bottom and a bit of the thinner shape on the top. Again, if you need to try it out a couple of times, let's go and try it out a couple of times. Going like that, adding the color inside. Try not to have any gaps right here. If we need to thin this part over the top up, we will go with our eraser and erase the parts slightly. So when we have the result like that, decide whether you like it or not. For example, we can go and maybe make it a little bit thinner onto the bottom. So again, working with our brush and with our eraser to create a nicely looking shape. Try to make it rounded, try to make it like very cute, very, very soft. And when we have it, let's go toward the opposite side and create something similar here too. For example, let's go toward this top part. Let's create some kind of the hook like that. Let's create it maybe one more time. Probably let's make it a little bit more protruding so we will have more interest right here. Let's create a bit of thickness over the bottom parts, working with our brush, working with our eraser, creating some nice looking elements. Again, paying attention to the connections. So if you have some bumps or some kind of not the very rounded shape right here, go and adjust it to create a very smoothly looking element. When we have this, let's go toward the bottom and let's add one more strand of hair over the bottom part. So for example, let's rotate the canvas like that and let's create maybe a bigger shape right here. Connect it nicely with the shape that you have onto the bottom. So we will have again some kind of this seamless connection, and let's add a bit of thickness toward this part. Adding the color inside so we don't have any gaps into these elements. Well, the only one gap is right here. And again, if we need to work onto the smoothness, we will work with our brush and with our eraser and we will adjust it in that way. If we want to adjust something else, for example, I quite don't like what I've created right here onto the bottom. I want to try it out one more time. If you want to do that too, you can go and do it too. So for example, maybe a slightly smaller shape right here, a bit of thickness right now onto the bottom part and to the top part too. When we have it, let's take a look at it without our lines of the sketch to see the silhouette. We will go back to our layers, hide it right here onto the layers, see whether you like it or not. If you are satisfied with it, let's get back to our layers and again unhide our layer with our sketchy lines. So for the parts that we need to add more, we will need to add the t-shirt and also the legs. So to see them, we will need to, for now, hide the layer with our back part of the hair. So let's tap onto the check mark and let's create one more layer on top of it. We will go with the same whitish color. We will need to turn on our Drone Assist. So we are getting back to the layers, tapping on the layer using the option Drone Assist, and we will go and recreate the shape that we have right here for our t-shirt. So let's go like that, and we will again with the same brush recreate the lines that we have. We will need to make sure that we are creating the close shape, and we will go toward the whole element that we have created right here with our outlines, and we will recreate the shape for our t-shirt. So let's go right here over at the bottom. Let's create this nice looking element. Pay attention towards the outside parts. If you want to make them maybe rounder or on the contrary, less rounder, go and do what you need to do. Make sure that the outlines are closed and drag and drop the color inside when you are ready. When we have the shape for the dress or the t-shirt, let's get back to our layers and go again underneath our layer with the element that we worked right now on. We will create one more layer underneath, again tapping on it using the option Drone Assist. When we have the assisted layer, we can go and change the color to skin if you want to use it, or use the same white color for these legs elements. So decide on your own. And let's go and recreate these details right now. So go on like that, creating the rounded triangular shapes. You can hold your line at the end. Try to do that. If it's snapping to a differently looking lines, you can go and try it out one more time, or go toward the top, close the shape and drag and drop the color inside these elements. Again, take a look at everything, decide whether you like everything or whether you want to go and adjust it. You can go again to your layers, hide the layer with the lines to see how the t-shirt and the legs and everything looks together. When you are satisfied with everything, we will get back to our layers and we will unhide our layer with the back part of the hair. We won't see our t-shirt and the legs because they are the same color. And when we have the result like that, we can go and start to add some details, so we will see all the details that we have created. Let's begin by going to our layers, and we will go to the back part of our hair. We will create one more layer on top, we will tap on it, and we will use first the option Clipping Mask, and then again tapping on the layer using the option Drone Assist. Onto this layer, we will add some kind of the shadow to our back part of the hair, and we will do it with a different color. So we are going to our color palette to select the color with the title Hair Back. When we did it, let's go and start to create these details right now by going toward the top, and we will firstly go and create some kind of the similar shape to what we have outside. So going like that and creating the element going in that way. You can go toward this little strand of hair and finish up creating this shape. Going toward this part, trying to close it. So you can go and close it right here where you can see that you are closing this shape. When we have it, we will go a little bit toward the top and we will create some kind of the line here too. So we can go like that and close up the shape. Drag and drop the color inside and then work onto the top part right here. So we don't need to see the element right here onto the top. So we'll go from the sides and we will start to erase the parts right here. So when we have the result like that, we can go and add a bit more interest toward this element by using our eraser and our brush. So we will be creating some kind of the strands of hair here too. So let's firstly go with our eraser and let's go and create some kind of the elements that will look like the parts right here onto the front. So for example, let's go right here and maybe create the cut like that. Go and create it in a nice way. So again, we are trying to create everything in a peculiar way, in a nice way, in a cute way, in a clean way, in a very rounded way, and we will have some tips right here too. So for example, let's go with the shape like that. We will create some kind of a texture with this element. And if you want, you can go symmetrical on both sides, or you can go and turn off your symmetrical drawing and create the details in not symmetrical way. So for example, let's get back to our layers, tap onto our layer with the back part of the hair, and we will turn off our Drone Assist right here. And now let's go with our brush and with our eraser and erase some parts and add some parts to create some texture. So for example, right here onto this side, let's go toward this part and let's cut this element right here and create it in a nice way again. So working with our brush, working with our eraser to create a nicely looking element, going towards some other parts and adding the elements in the same way that we have right here onto this side. So for example, we can grab our eraser and for example, go from this bottom part to create some cut like that. If you don't like how the cut onto the right that we have right here onto the top looks, you are welcome to get rid of it, for example, and create something different. So let's spend some time here and create a couple of these details. Pay attention to all the tips that you have right here when you were recoloring the elements. So if you have some gaps or if you have some elements that you need to pay attention to, go and do what you need to do right here to create a nicely looking element. So let's go and add a couple of textury parts, and we will work with our brush and with our eraser along this whole element. So for example, we can go right here and maybe connect these parts that we have right here, add the color inside, and then maybe create a differently looking part right here onto the bottom. That's of course if you want to not create the symmetrical elements. It's up to you. If you want to create them in a symmetrical way, you are welcome to create them in a symmetrical way. Again, with all the elements that we are creating, try to make them in a very rounded and very smooth way. When you have the result like that, let's take a look whether we maybe want to go outside right here and create some parts right here, some cuts, some elements that looks like cuts right here onto these elements. So for example, we can go right here and maybe create the element going like that, add the color inside, work onto the tips right here too with our brush and with our eraser to create nicely looking elements. And again, all the elements that we are adding, they should be looking in accordance with the flow that we have into our hair. So they are not going straight way like that. They're going with the same direction that we have for the overall shape for our hair. So for example, let's go right here and maybe create one more little detail, adding the color inside, creating something going in that way. Again, working with our brush, working with our eraser to create a nicely looking element. If you want to go to the opposite side and create something similar here too, you are welcome to do it. And also to add some more interest right here, we can go with our eraser and, for example, erase some little parts inside to create some kinds of the like speckle effect. So for example, we can go right here, maybe create some little cuts in that way, go with the smaller size of the brush, like bigger size of the brush, create a couple of speckles going in that way to add some interest toward the picture. Vary the size of the elements that you are creating with this cutting method. So going like that and creating a couple of speckle details going in that way. When we are done with the back part of the hair, let's go and probably work onto the front part of the hair. Let's go toward our layer where we have the front part of the hair. Let's create one more layer on top, tap on it. We will use firstly the option clipping mask. Secondly, we will use the option drone assist. We will select the different color right now. So it's going to be our hair shadows color. We will select the same brush, or if you prefer, we can go to our calligraphy folder, the same folder where our monoline brush is. And we can select, for example, brush pen or a script brush. So we will have nicely looking tips onto the sides. So with this brush, and probably with the smaller size of it, we will go toward the sides that we have right here for our hair, and we will need to create some kind of the line effect right here. So going like that and starting to create the elements. As we are onto the separate layer, it will be easier for us to go over the top and create these line elements. And we also will need to go along the whole shape that we have created and see whether the lines are looking nice right here. So again, everything should look very like rounded over everywhere that we are creating our lines, and it should also look the way that we like have the flow right now. So let's go over the whole shape and we will try to remain the line weight everywhere. We can add some difference toward the line weight, but it shouldn't be too bothering. So it doesn't need to go from like that to that. So we are creating in a very flow way our line weight right here too. So let's go along the whole shape right now over the top and we will create these lines right here. On the top, we can add a bit more thicker elements right here. And also you can vary the size of this element. So for example, you can see that I've added this line a little bit going towards the left, and I will go to the previous layer where we have this main shape, and I will grab the eraser and erase this part that we don't need right here. Now, when we did it, let's get back to our layer where we are adding these lines. Let's see whether we want to maybe go right here near the face and add a bit thicker line right here. So probably it will be easier to do with the brush. Going like that and maybe adding a bit more of the color right here. If you already did it, go with your eraser, erase the parts that you don't need. Try to make the consistent line right here. When we have it, we also will get back to our brush and we will go and change the color. So we will use the same color that we use for the back here, so hair back color, and go into some areas right here where we have our fringe, and we will add some dividing lines right here. So again, to add a bit of texture right here. So let's go, for example, toward the middle part, and we will create the lines like that. So you can go and do it with the Symmetry Tool turned on, or you can go and turn it off. So we will have some difference into our lines. So for example, let's get back to our layers, tap onto the layer with our lines, and turn off our drawing assist right here. And again, I will try out it one more time. So going like that, creating the elements. You can go with this brush that we are using right now, so we'll have nice looking tips right here. Going to the opposite side, creating a bit of the element here too. If you want, go and create a couple of more of these elements to create the nicely looking details like that. If you want, you also can go and change the color of the tips right here onto the side. So to do it very easily, we can go to our layers. We can tap onto this layer where we have our lines and use the option Alpha Lock. So when we are using Alpha Lock, we'll be able to add the colors only onto the existing areas onto this layer. When we did it, we will get back to our brush library, airbrush and folder, soft blend brush. And with this lighter color, we can go toward the tips and we can add some kinds of the gradients toward these little lines. So we are trying to create a very soft transition between the colors. We are trying not to create a blotchy effect. So one part of the line is looking dark, another part looking light. We will need to have a very soft transition. So try to do it with this brush. If you want to add a different color right here to these little parts, you are welcome to change it to hair shadow, for example. Go over the bottom part or the top part and create the secondary color right here. When we have it, we are done with the lines onto this part, so we can add the secondary color right here onto the top, and we will do it with the same brush that we are using right now, so it is our soft blend brush. Let's get back to our layers. We will get back to our layer with our main color for the front part, and we'll create one more layer on here. It is automatically clipped because we have the color, the layer onto the top, and we will start to add the secondary color right here onto the top by selecting the hair back color. So with this hair back color and with this brush that we are using right now, we will go and start to add some kinds of the gradient right here onto this element, and we will start to do it in that way. So go towards the fringe, start to add the color, mostly going toward the top, and we are adding the color right here onto the fringe, the parts that we have onto the sides too. So we will go like that and start to add the color here. If you already did it, you can go and grab your smudge tool, go with the bigger size of it and smudge it nicely, so we will have a very nice looking transition between the colors. Also, we can go toward our brush, toward our eraser, and we can go and erase the parts slightly, so we will have some kind of the nicely looking shadowy part right here. So you can see what I'm doing right now. I'm erasing the parts right here, and that creates a nicely looking effect. So for example, let's go like that, erase the part like that, going toward the opposite side, and again from the sides we can go and create the cuts right here too. Again, if you need to work with your smudge tool, go and smudge it nicely right here onto the top. Try to have more whitish color over the bottom right here onto the fringe. And when we have this color done, we can go to our color palettes and select the different colors. So for example, let's go with this purple color right here onto the bottom. We will use the same brush and we will go from the top right and we will start to add the secondary color right here. So we will try to create the difference into the colors. And again, we are trying to create a very soft transition between the colors. So if we need to go and work with our smudge tool, we will go and do that. If you see that you already did it a little bit, you can go grab your eraser, for example, erase some part like that, and then get to the smudge tool and try to smudge everything nicely so you have a nicely looking result right here. Try to create nice connections and try to create nice transition between the colors. So let's add a bit more of the purplish color over the top right and create something going in that way. Again, try to create a nice transition between the colors. And when we have the result like that, let's go towards the back part and start to do the same things here too. So firstly, going toward our layers, and we will start by finding the layer with our back part. And we will need to create one more layer right here. So you can go either between these two parts, between these two layers, or go like on the top of the layer where you have the color for the back part and put the layer right here. So when we have the result like that, let's firstly get back to our hair back color. And again, with the same soft blend brush, we will go with the bigger size of the brush over the top and we will start to add the color right here. So let's go like that. Let's create the colored element, going closer to the shape. If we overdid it, grabbing our eraser firstly, erasing the parts that we want to soften up, and then working with our smudge tool. So trying to create the seamless connection between the front part of our hair and the back part of the hair. Firstly, go into our color palettes, selecting the purple color right here and working onto the purple element right here to create a nicely looking smudged element between these two parts. Again, if you see that somewhere you need to go with your eraser and erase the part so it connects nicely with the front part, so you don't have the line that looks like that. We will need to have a very seamless connection. So let's go and work with our brush and with our eraser to achieve this very seamless looking connection. So working like that, work with your brush, with your eraser, smudge tool, smudge everything nicely so you have a nicely looking result. You also can get back and forth towards your color palettes and add the color in that way. So for example, right here, we might add a bit of the color to not see the difference between the front part and the back part. So our main goal right now is to create the seamless connection between these two parts. So if you need to go to your color palettes or back and forth from the top layer with the fringe and the back layer with the bottom part of our hair, go there and try to create a very seamlessly looking connection. When you have the result like that, when you have a nice and seamless connection between these two parts, the front part of the hair and the back part of the hair, where you don't see the line right here that we had onto our front part, let's grab our eraser and we will go along the shape that we have for the whole thing, and we will erase the parts right here to create some kinds of the highlights right now. So let's go like that with our eraser, and we will go very, very boldly and create the line going in that way. So overall, we will need to pay attention toward our outside outlines, and we will need to go in accordance with them. So going like that along the whole shape and starting to erase the elements right here. Let's go to the opposite side and let's erase the elements here. So again, trying to go and erase the parts that we have right here onto the bottom. If you want, you can do the same thing as you did right here onto the front part. So we can go to some of the elements that we've created and erase the parts right here to create a nicely looking shape of some kind of a shadow right now. If you already did it, or if you want to soften up some parts, for example, right here, we can again get back to our smudge tool and make it like that. So creating a nicely looking connection between the colors. So when we have the result like that, we will go and work onto the hair even more by going firstly with our eraser, and we will go and create the cuts right now that will look a little bit better. So we will go along the whole shape even more, and we will start to create a very softly looking line right here. So try to create the seamless line as always, and when you have it, let's go and create the highlights that will look very, very nice and very, very juicy right here onto the top of our hair. So we will go to our layers, and we will go towards the very top, toward the lines that we have for our fringe right here, and we will create one more layer on top. Let's change the color to white, and we will firstly go toward the very top area right here onto the left, and we will create a big highlight with the different brush, for example. So firstly, going back to our brush library, calligraphy folder, monoline brush, going with this brush toward this top part, and we will create a big highlight going in that way. When we have it, drag and drop the color inside, when you have this little part going towards some other elements right here and creating a couple of more little highlights in that way. If you see that they are not looking too bright and maybe you want to go with some kind of the darker shape right here for this coloring part, we can probably do it by adding another layer of this like coloring part. So if you want to have a soft look, you can keep it, but if you want to make it a little bit brighter, you can go and do it too. So firstly, let's finish up with this little highlights that we are creating. You can go with some simple shapes like that, add a couple of dots, and let's decide whether we want to go a little bit darker with the shapes. For example, if we want to go a little bit darker, we can go to this layer that we have created for like the front part, and we can make a copy of it. So let's swipe the layer from right to left and choose the option duplicate. We'll have a darker color right now, but we will need to do the same for the layer that we have right here onto the bottom. So let's find it, swiping from right to left, choosing the option duplicate. So when we have this darker color, we have the highlights popping up. That's what we need. If you want to go even darker with the color, you know what you need to do. Go to these layers, make some copies, and add the colors in that way. So when we have the result like that, we are kind of done with the hair right now. So let's go and work a little bit onto our t-shirt. So let's firstly find our t-shirt and let's create one more layer on top. Tap on the layer and use the option clipping mask. So when we did it, let's go and create something similar to what we have right here onto the top of our hair. We can do it the same way, but we also can use one of the brushes and it will be probably easier for us to create it. We want to have some kind of the like weirdly looking effect right now. So first we'll go toward our brush library and we will go to the folder that is called Luminance. With this folder, we will go and find the Nebula brush and we will change the color to, for example, hair shadows. With this brush, we will go toward our t-shirt and very accurately, we will start to add the details like that. So you can go and put a couple of tabs like here and you can create the nicely looking effects in that way. So something similar to what we have on the top, but done in a like not that painful way. So create the nicely looking t-shirt in that way. Go with a different pattern, add different colors right here. You can explore the folder with the colors. You can use different colors right now. If you are satisfied with how it looks, we can get back to our regular brush. So go into, again, our calligraphy folder, monoline brush. We can go to some of the areas onto our t-shirt and, for example, make something similar to what we have right here. So we can go with our eraser and maybe create some kind of a pattern right here with our eraser. So, for example, going from the bottom and creating some kind of the cuts right here to create some peculiar looking details. So if you want to do that, go and do that. Use your brush, use your eraser, create something like that. If you want to soften up the edge right here with the colored elements and not colored elements, you are welcome to use your smudge tool and erase the parts or smudge the parts right here with your smudge tool a little bit, so like that. So if you want to do that, go and do that. For example, we can go toward our little elements that we have for our, like, I forgot the parts right here, the shoulder parts, I don't know. We will go to them and we will soften them up here too and create something good in that way. So when we have the elements like that, when we have the colored t-shirt right here, if you want, you can go and maybe add some pattern right here, maybe some kind of the spooky thing right here. But if you don't want to do that, if you want to create the elements the same way as I have them, let's go toward our layers and let's continue working on our t-shirt a little bit. So we'll create one more layer on top, we will tap on it and we will use the option clipping mask. Then we will go to our color palettes and we will select these lashes and eyes colors and we will go underneath the shape of the heads and we will create the shadow right here. So repeat the overall shape that we have right here for the neck. We can go and close the shape like that, drag and drop the color inside, and let's decide whether we are satisfied with the amount of color right here, the opacity. We can get back to our layers, tap onto the N icon and adjust it slightly. So for example, something around maybe 50-55% looks a little bit better. And when we have it, we can go and add a couple of more little shadows toward our t-shirt. So for example, firstly, let's go on the same layer with our brush that we can find in the calligraphy folder. So for example, let's go with script brush. We will go toward our little armpits right here and we will add the separation onto this part. And to do it on both sides, we will get back to our layer, tap on the layer and use the option Draw and Assist. So going toward these little parts and let's create some kind of the cut right here. You can create it in a subtle way, or if you want, you can go and create it in a less subtle way if you prefer. So work with your brush, work with your eraser, create the elements that will look nice. If you don't like this color, if you want to create it in a different color, you can go again to your layers, tap on this layer, use the option Alpha Lock and change the color to, for example, cyan blue or hair shadow. Go over these lines and recolor them in that way. When we have the result like that, let's go and add the shadows underneath our t-shirt and underneath the head and everything right here. So we will first go to our layers. And we will need to go toward our layer where we have our hair. So let's go above the layer where we have this secondary color. We will create a new layer right here, tap on the layer, use the option Clipping Mask. And again, we can tap on the layer and use the option Draw and Assist. Let's use the same color that we have right now on. It is our cyan blue. And we will go above the shape that we have for our t-shirt and we will go and create some kind of the lines like that. So going along the whole shape right now and starting to create the shadows right here. So overall, what we need to do is to repeat the shape and create our shadows in that way. Let's also go behind the legs right here. So we will go and create the shadows behind them too. So basically going along the whole shape that we have at the bottom and we are recreating it with this color. Now, when we have it, we can go and make it slightly less visible. So we will go and change the opacity right now. So going again to our layer, tapping onto the N icon and reducing our opacity. So you can find the level that works for you. So for example, something about 60% looks good. If you see that, you can go to some other elements right here and maybe add more color right here behind them. You are welcome to go and do that. So when we have the result like that, if you like it, we also will need to go right here toward the top and add a bit of the color toward this part. We also can go right here toward the hanging parts that we have and add the shadows to them too. We can go behind them like that and add the color going in that way. Again, we will need to pay attention towards the little cuts that we have and toward these little tips that we have right here and create the nicely looking elements. And also, when we have created these shadows, we can go with a darker color. So for example, lashes and eyes, going toward these little parts and we can add a bit of the shadows here, either on this layer or on the separate layer. So for example, to see it in a more clean way, we can go to our layers, create one more layer on top, tap on it, Clipping Mask, and again, go toward these little parts and add the shadows here too. Again, you can do it on one side or on both sides at the same time. So go into our layers. If we need to turn on our Draw and Assist to create it in both ways, we can go and add the secondary shadowy color right here to create more depth right here. So for example, let's go underneath the face and closer to the shapes that we have for our hair, maybe going a little bit on top of our little t-shirt. So creating the shadows like that, and again, deciding whether we want to adjust the opacity of this layer. So again, for example, we can go with something around 60%, maybe 65% to see it in a nicer way. And when we have the result like that, if you want, we can go and add a bit of the color right here that will be quite transparent. So we can get back to our airbrushing folder, soft blend brush, and go from the middle part and add a bit of the color going in that way. When we have it, we also will need to go toward our neck and we will need to add the shadow here too. So let's go and find the layer with our face. We will go and create one more layer on top of it. And we will go with the same color that we are using right now, this darkish purplish color. You can go with the same brush or change the brush to your liking. So going along this whole shape and starting to create a shadow going in that way. So just putting the whole shadow onto our neck. If you like how this looks, you can keep it as it is, or you can go again to your opacity slider and adjust the opacity so it's not that bright. You can adjust it to your liking in that way. So for example, find the level that works for you. When you are satisfied with it, let's also go to the legs right now and we will add a bit of a shadow to them too. So again, going and finding the layer with our legs and creating one more layer on top. Tapping on the layer, Clipping Mask, tapping on the layer, Draw and Assist. Let's get back to our calligraphy folder, either monoline brush or script brush, doesn't matter. getting to our color palettes and selecting the darkish color. So for example, let's start with hair shadows. And we will need to go to the shape underneath the dress, and we will need to repeat it. So we are creating the shadow going in that way. And also we can go and experiment a little bit and, for example, maybe create a bit of the shadow right here onto this side. So you can go and create the shape like that. If you don't like it, you can keep everything as it was before, or go and create a peculiar shadow going in that way. And again, if you want, you can go towards the opacity slider and adjust the opacity onto this layer. And now when we have the result like that, we are done with our girl, but let's make it a little bit glowing. So what we are going to be doing, we will firstly go to our layers and we will find the layer where we have our main shape of the hair. Let's go and swipe the layer from right to left and choose the option duplicate, and we will go to this layer that we have right here onto the bottom. Let's go to our color palettes and change the color to the cyan blue, and we will drag it toward this element. You cannot see right now what's happening here, but if you go to your layers, and you will see that you change the color right here onto this element. That's exactly what we need. What we need to do next is to change the blending mode of this layer. So we will need to tap onto the N icon and go to this list with these blending modes. We will go and select the Add Blending Mode, and we will go toward our Magic Wand tool, and we will do the thing that will make it glowing. So we will go toward the Gaussian blur, and you can see we are not doing anything right now. We have a little option Gaussian blur on the top. We will use our Apple Pencil. We will hold it at the place and we will move it more toward the right. So you can see we are adding this glow, and you can go with a lot of glow and you can go with the very tiny amount of glow, and so you can decide whether you want to go like full size of glowing or find the level that works for you. So for example, something around 30% looks good. When we have it, we also can try out another thing to make it even more glowing. So accept the changes when you are satisfied with Gaussian blur by tapping onto the Magic Wand tool, and then tap on it one more time, and let's go under the bloom option. We will again tap onto the Magic Wand tool, and we can move it more toward the right to create, like you see, a very, very glowing effect. You can add just a bit of it or enough of it. Decide on your own to create the result that you prefer it here. For example, I will go with something around 60% maybe, and when we are satisfied with everything here, we will tap onto our Magic Wand tool. Now, when we have it, let's go and add a bit of the elements onto the bottom to create a very, again, nicely looking ghostly effect. We will get back to our layers and we will create one more layer on top. Let's drag this layer underneath this glowing thing, and we will go toward our color palettes to select the white color. With the white color and with the small size of the brush, we will go underneath this tip that we have right here, and we will create the element going in that way. So we are creating the ellipse. We will need to hold it at the end with our Apple Pencil and also put one of our fingers on the screen to make it horizontal. When we have it, you can adjust the size of it if you prefer. When we are satisfied with everything, we will go and drag and drop the color toward the middle part, and we will need to position it in the middle. So to do that, we will go to our arrow key on the top left. We will go under snapping right here, and we will turn on snapping into the settings. Let's hold our Apple Pencil at the canvas, and we will be looking for one line that's going from top to the bottom through the middle part. So find the middle part with the orange line, and then let's go to the freeform method. We will zoom in our canvas, and we will go toward one of the nodes either on the top or on the bottom, and we will make this thing a little bit less open. So we will need to create some kind of the shape like that. When we have it, let's tap onto our arrow key. We will have the result like that. And also onto the same layer, we can go and add some little speckles around our little girl. So with the same brush that we are using right now, we can go closer to the shape. We can add the little speckles with the bigger size of the brush, with the smaller size of the brush, all around our element. So let's spend some time here, and with different sizes of the brush, let's add the speckle elements around our girl. And when we are done with this task, we can do one more thing that will add more of this ghostly effect. So let's get back to our layers, and we will create one more layer on top, but we will need to drag it and put it underneath this layer with this whitish element. So I will try it one more time. So we will need to hold it and drag it underneath this layer. When we have it in that way, let's again tap onto the N icon and change the blending mode to add, and then we will again go to our color palettes and select this cyan blue color. We will then go to our brush library, again go into this folder with the title Luminance, and we will use the brush with the title Light Pen. With this brush, we will go to one of the sides, or if you prefer, we can do it in that way by going to one of the sides and then copying it, or we can go again to our layers, tap onto this layer and use the option Drone Assist. We will go from the center, we will put more pressure toward the center, and then we will be releasing the pressure going outside. So let's try it out from the center with a bit of the pressure right here, and then releasing the pressure going outside. You can hold your line at the end, and we also can hold one of our fingers on the screen to create this straight line. When we have the result like that, if you see that you have some kind of this little thing, you can go to your eraser and make the tip more tippy right here to create the element going in that way. We will need to have some kind of the receding light right here and create it going in that way. Again, if you want, we can go to the arrow key and make it bigger, make it smaller, try to make it similar to what we have right here with our shape that we have in the middle. So as if it is going from this little shape outside and creating this receding light effect right now. When we have the result like that, if you see that you have some kind of the element right here in the middle that is not looking good, you can go with your brush and add more color right here. So try to do it, or try to use the smudge tool right here to add a bit of the color right here in the middle. You can also go with the smudge tool along the whole shape and create a more blurry effect, or you can go again to the magic wand tool, use the option Gaussian blur and maybe add a bit of the blur toward this element, just a little bit of the blur to create this effect. And again, if you want, you also can go to your layers, tap onto the A icon onto this layer and maybe adjust the opacity of this layer. So it's up to you whether you want to do that or not. When you are satisfied with everything here, let's take a look at everything from the distance, and we don't need this line of symmetry anymore, so let's go and turn it off by going to our range icon over the top left, canvas, toggling drawing guide right here to see clearly what we have created. And if you like what we've created, we are done with our illustration. I hope you are proud of your result. Share it on socials and tag me so I can see your beautiful creations. And if you enjoyed this video, you can find more similar kawaii tutorials on my Skillshare or on Patreon at the link in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.